Summoning is the inflationary mechanic, or breeding program as it's called in other projects, for the Red Village. It's the act of bringing the blood of two champions, your playable digital assets in the game, together to create a third brand new champion. Summoning can be done in one of two ways: within a Battlemaster's own barracks, so between two existing champions that are in one barrack, or it can be done on an open marketplace where one Battlemaster lists a champion and the other can then take that champion's blood that's listed and combine it with one in their own barracks. You can also do what's called a public but private summoning, where you have two champions that are in your own barracks, but you list one and then buy the blood from yourself, essentially, in order to decrease fees. There'll be a video on fees and profit in this playlist, and also linked below if you want to check that out as well. Summoning isn't done on a set schedule like once a month or every other month like some other projects. It's actually tied to the number of tournaments that Battlemasters complete during a set amount of time. So between summoning cycles, there's a counter on the website, like so, that counts down the number of fights, tournaments, that need to occur in order for the Blood Wraith, who casts the spells for us to summon, to arrive and the summoning cycle to start. Important to note that the number at the start of each countdown after a cycle is not fixed either. So it can vary, but it'll always be pinned to the top of the website and trackable by players. Yo, this is so sick. Wait till you guys check out the how to summon video. To summon successfully requires a good mix of skill, patience, chance, and strategy. Summoning well can certainly be a profitable endeavor for players. In a game such as CRV, where you have actual real ownership of your digital assets, you are free to sell, trade, swap, or dispose of your summoned champions however you like. So you have two champions, you summon them together, and then that new half-blood that you create, you get to keep forever in perpetuity. You can sell it. You can also sell its blood in future summoning rituals. There are tons of different options, which we'll explore in depth on this channel as the game develops and the utility of our champions increase over time. In terms of end goals, the goal of summoning is to combine the skills of champions, preferably using the knowledge you have gained with wisdom, which if you haven't seen that video already, it'll be linked down in the description, revealing their traits, strengths, and weaknesses to create even more powerful champions, more likely to win in tournaments, or champions of a particular cosmetic rarity. And if you want to get really big brain, you can actually, over time, create a champion that is both incredibly cosmetically rare and has insane fighting skills and blood strength, and really just creating the ultimate champion. And one last thing, every single time you summon in the Red Village, even when it's with your worst champions in your barracks, the absolute peasant of peasants, just like a golden ticket, there's a chance that anyone, even you, can summon the best champion in the game today. So if you want to learn more about how to summon and everything we know so far about how the process works, check out this next video on summoning rules and limits. So a few things to note about summoning cycles before we go into rules and decay. The cycles only occur after sufficient activity within the Red Village via tournaments, but it also can include other brutal acts. I think that's going to eventually at some point include permadeath, which is going to be the deflationary mechanic or burn mechanic in the Red Village once that launches. And who knows what else the team has planned in terms of these brutal acts. But the point is, there's going to be a variety of acts that the community is going to have to do both individually and together in order to summon the Blood Wraith and start the summoning cycle. Oh wow, I actually didn't catch this part on the first reading. So there's actually going to be times when the Blood Queen, with her unpredictable nature, will choose to keep the count hidden. So it won't always be on the screen like I said in the last video. There may be times where it's actually hidden. That's actually really interesting. I wonder if there's going to be a time where if burns are incorporated, we won't know how many we have to burn. Ooh, that's actually really cool. In terms of the number of times you can summon in each cycle, each champion will only be able to summon once publicly and once privately. So because of this, you need to choose your champion wisely. So if you have a champion, you can combine its blood with any other champion in your barracks and then either list it in the spell book so that someone else could buy it, or buy the blood of a champion already in the spell book and combine it with that champion you already did your private summon with. You could also do the combination of private in-house summons with two champions in your barracks, and then do another summoning with those two champions again by listing one publicly and then buying your own blood to merge those two together a second time. This is called public yet private summoning. And as we'll discuss in the next video, public yet private summoning can have huge discounts on summoning costs, but the catch is that anyone can quickly find your champion that you listed and snipe it from you using a marketplace like Haku. So after you do your summoning with your champions, they won't be able to fight for 48 hours. And also you should know that you can't summon with a champion that just got summoned. You have to wait till the next cycle. For this first week of summoning, if you're catching this one early, there's actually going to be a 1 week period where you can't fight. But going forward, it'll only be 48 hours. But going forward, it'll only be 2 or 3 days. So it looks like the time period of the summoning cycle will usually be 2 to 3 days, and battle masters can choose not to utilize the available summons with the summoning cycle. If over a time period of about 2 to 3 days, if battle masters choose not to utilize the summons within the summoning cycle, the TRV team has full discretion to either open up champions to undertake multiple summons or close the cycle entirely. On occasion, special champions and tournaments will be run that may apply additional bonuses that will speed up the arrival of the summoning cycle. In terms of rules, these are all pretty straightforward. Number one, there's 5 different character classes, and as of now, you can only summon with champions in the same class. So Rangers with Rangers, Wizards with Wizards, Barbs with Barbs, Druids with Druids, Pallies with Pallies, but no intermingling between classes. Genotype, pureblood. So if you have a pureblood champion, 1 through 12, 1 through 6 are we have right now, you can summon with champions for an unlimited amount of cycles in perpetuity. If you have a half-blood, which is R13 to 99, champions can summon with both pureblood and half-blood champions. So in terms of in terms of which bloodlines can summon with who, all pureblood champions R1 to R12 can summon with any champion. Half-bloods can summon with either purebloods or other half-bloods, and then soulless, which is basically RX, way beyond any R number over 99, can only summon with pureblood champions R1 to R12. If you're not really clear on how genotype works in the Red Village, be sure to check out my video on bloodlines and genotypes, link below. In terms of rules and limits regarding to lineage and ancestry, if 2 champions share the same parent, they cannot summon together. And a champion can never summon with his parent, and correspondingly, a champion can't summon with its child. And a champion can never summon with its grandparent, and correspondingly, a champion can't summon with its grandchild. So basically, you can't weave a lineage back into itself until you get to the great-grandkids. You can see your champion's genotype on their trait page, and then their lineage on the summoning page. Initially, these are the limits we're going to have for the early cycles. Each champion can participate in 1 private summoning, and each champion can participate in 1 public summoning, as we talked about prior. Regardless of the above limits, summon champions cannot themselves participate until the summoning completion of, and also as noted before, you can't summon with the newly summoned champ. The above limits will change over time based on activity in the Red Village. Another important thing to know is that after you summon, you're not going to be able to participate in tournaments for 48 hours for that newly summoned champ. Last thing we want to talk about is summoning decay. A champion is limited to the maximum number of times it can ever summon. This is based on its genotype. This includes when a champion is either a blood taker or a blood giver. More on blood taker and blood giver later. The blood giver is the person who lists their blood in the spellbook, and the blood taker is the person who buys the blood from the spellbook. More on blood giver and blood taker in a later video, link below. So R1 to R12, pureblood, so Genesis, Mystics, which we have already, and Warlords and Lionhearts, which will be mentioned at a later date, can summon an unlimited amount of time with no decay. Half-bloods with R numbers R13 to 25 can summon 24 times over their lives. R26 to R50s can summon 12 times. R51 and R99s can summon 6 times. And then the R number undefiable, or soulless, anything over 99, champions are able to summon 3 times before the blood is corrupted, and they can no longer be used for summoning. The number of remaining summons that a champion has to use can be seen on the champion summoning page. Alright, so now that we've gone over the rules and limits for summoning, let's dive into how much it costs to summon and all the different ways you can make money summoning new champs in the TRV ecosystem. Alright, so there's 2 fees associated with summoning, both of which are paid by the Battle Master who keeps the summon champion. When you check out the how to summon video link below, it'll give you a rundown on like how that all looks once you do your summon. But the Battle Master must select one of their own champions to participate in the summoning process, which is known as the Blood Taker. So basically you take your champion, you put them inside the summoning spellbook, which is in that video, and then you list whatever price that you want, but there's going to be a minimum fee for that champion based on their R number, which we'll get into. And for the Battle Master who's going to be buying that blood, they're going to have to pay a fee to the Blood Wraith, who makes this all possible with his wicked spells, and then also pay the fee that the Blood Giver set in the spellbook. The fleas are split between the Red Village Community Chest, the X account, and the barracks of the Blood Giver champion. The exact split depends on the number of tournaments that the Blood Giver has been involved in. The more fights the Blood Giver has participated in, the greater the share that the Battle Master gets. So the general fee for all summonings, both public and private, is going to be 25, and that goes to the Blood Wraith in the Community Chest. And then for public summoning, listing a champion in the spellbook, based on the R number, these are going to be the fees here. You can see all this in the good book, which I'll link down below at the description of this video. For private summoning, the same minimums are used. It just depends on whichever one has the lowest R number. So if you're doing an R1 and R6, you're going to have to pay the R1 fee plus the $25 summoning fee in order to summon. If you're summoning an R5 and R6, you're going to have to pay the 48 plus the 25, so on and so forth. And then this is going to be the split of the fees for the private summoning. So you don't get a chance to make any money back when you private summon, only when you list your champion's blood in the spellbook. So for public summonings, you can list your champion at any time in the spellbook. It's also, the price is not set indefinitely. You can always list and delist instantly. And you can list in any fee in USD as long as it's equal or greater than these minimums here. A champion will remain in the spellbook until the summoning cycle has completed, when all listed champions are removed. A champion selected from the spellbook to be summoned is known as the blood giver. So any champion that lists his blood in the spellbook is the blood giver. And when a battle master summons using a champion from the spellbook, they will pay the blood fee, and the person who pays the blood fee is the blood giver champion. In terms of the money that people get back when they list their champions in the spellbook as the blood giver, the greater the number of tournaments that blood giver champion has fought is correlated with the proportion of the blood fee that they get. So if you've never fought your champion and it is unblooded, you get 50% of the blood fee. 1 to 50 is 75, 51 to 150 is 85, 151 to 500 tournaments is 90%, 501 to 1000 is 95, and 100,001 plus tournaments is 98% return. And then whatever you don't get back goes to the community chest based on the split. And as we said in one of the earlier videos, in order to save money and not have to pay that full minimum fee, you could also list one of your champions in the spellbook and then buy your own blood, combining 2 champions in your barracks. Just keep in mind, there is a potential that you may get sniped by another player looking to buy that blood that you list at a price that they believe to be reasonable. In terms of earnings, that you can sell your blood in the spellbook. You can summon a new champion and then sell that champion, or eventually sell that champion's blood in the next cycle. You can also identify and develop really cool qualities that make it a really good commodity that people want to buy. Champions with good blood strength, good fighting traits, so on and so forth. Not to mention the opportunity to summon a really good champion that you can fight in the arena and also earn some coin that way. Lastly, one revolutionary thing about the Red Village ecosystem is perpetual earnings. I have only seen this attempted in one other project, and this is the only project that I've seen do it with an actual playable game. Big shout out to Web3 Warrior, one of the hosts of our Blood Queen's Court weekly TRV spaces, who actually came to this concept on his own and dropped it in suggestions months back. It's so sick to be able to see this be materialized in the project and have the opportunity to get passive income from their champions in perpetuity. Let's dive into how that's going to work in the Red Village. One of the biggest innovations in summoning in TRV is the concept of perpetual earnings. This is a percentage royalty fee built in every single summoned champion in the village forever. The earnings are triggered when a summoned champion is sold on one of the partner marketplaces, Haku and OpenSea. Every time a summoned champion is purchased or sold on a certified marketplace, a percentage fee is taken by the marketplace, 2.5 currently. Percentage fee is earned by the TRV's account at 2.5, but subtracted from that 2.5, 1% is going to go to the owner of that summoned champion's parent, and then 0.5% will go to the wallet of the person who did that summoning and owned that pure blood when they did the summons. In other words, every single time a summoned champion is sold, a small percentage of the sale fee will be paid back to the current owner of the original summoner of that champion. And then in addition to that, even if that champion ends up being sold or moved, traded or whatever in the future, that wallet owner, the battle master who owns that wallet when the summoning took place, will receive this small percentage of the fee. And that fee will be passed down over and over and over and over again through the bloodlines as it's tied to the pure blood taker. These payments are not automatically done via smart contract. They're processed on a regular schedule by the team. And to encourage ongoing participation with TRV, there may be requirements for the wallet of the original pureblood blood taker to continue to hold at least one TRV champion in order to be eligible for the perpetual earnings. This intent is to provide battle masters with an ongoing earning stream and enable the creation of valuable champions, particularly purebloods. It's an amazing concept, and it's so sick that it's live and being integrated into the TRV ecosystem. An amazing way for you to earn profit, and could be very lucrative long term if you play the game at a high level. And speaking of how to play the game at a high level, let's go into the summoning mechanics of what you need to be keeping in mind when trying to optimize your summonings and create the best champion that's ever existed in the Red Village. So when it comes to summoning mechanics, before we dive into how cosmetic traits are passed down and how fighting traits are passed down, I want to talk about another set of traits that were revealed shortly before this first summoning cycle went live. They are called genetic traits. Champions currently have 2 cosmetic traits, armor, hair color, war paint, etc., and fighting traits, strength, defense, attack, omega. If you want to learn more about those things, check the link in the description below for those videos. They also have 2 genetic traits, and these genetic traits are not visible to battle masters, and they are not revealed via wisdom. Genetic traits directly impact the likelihood of and the way in which cosmetic and fighting traits are passed down from the blood taker or blood giver to a summoned champion. So essentially, they are the traits of how well or how likely it is for your champion to pass on either their cosmetic traits or their fighting traits. There's only one set of genetic traits for a given champion. In other words, the same trait values are applied across all inherited bloodlines. So basically, all genetic traits of all champions in the TRV ecosystem will be from a pureblood champion, specifically the blood giver of the original summoned half-blood. Specifically, the genetic traits of the blood giver of the pureblood who started the line. So these traits are the deciding factor of which traits get passed on throughout the summoning process, and players will come to learn about these genetic traits by using the visual results of summoning. So while you won't be able to look at how fighting traits get passed on down the generations unless you get really deep into the data and third-party tools, and I'm sure people will come up with ways to kind of gauge a range of how things go, but you will be able to look at champs and see how strong people's blood strength is by how often their cosmetic traits kind of get passed down throughout their entire bloodline. Once you've keyed in on which champions have high blood strength and which ones don't, then you'll be able to use that knowledge to make decisions to improve the hidden traits of your champions, such as fighting traits. So blood strength is made up of 2 different things: trait strength and genetic strength. So basically, you do a summoning, and the parent's trait strength is the likelihood that the trait passed on to the half-blood is coming from them. Genetic strength is the likelihood that the trait passed on to the half-blood is coming from somebody in their ancestry. If you're summoning with pureblood champions, then the trait strength and the genetic traits are essentially the same thing because they don't have any parents. So blood strength is the combination of these 2 things. And blood potency is a separate variable that's dependent on your champion's R number. And that variable is a determinant of how likely it is for your summoned champion to receive traits that are improved and greater than its parents or ancestors. So this will make more sense once we go through the cosmetic and the fighting trait examples in the next 2 videos. So basically there's 8 traits, 4 cosmetic and 4 fighting. And every single trait goes through the same process, with the exception of the fighting traits, which have 1 extra process, and I'll talk about that in the fighting traits passed down video. So basically, let's say when you start with breed, you'll have a random chance and a genetic chance. We don't know exactly what these chances are. We'll have to figure that out over time. If it ends up being genetic, then the outcome will be based on the trait strength, genetic strength, trait strength, and genetic strength of both the blood taker and the blood giver. So basically, all 4 of those values are put into one sum, and then the percentage likelihood of any of the 4 scenarios occurring is based on the ratio of these individual values, with the total being the denominator. So let's take an example with some random numbers and say that we're summoning with 2 half-bloods and the blood taker's trait strength is 10, its genetic strength is 20, the trait strength of the blood giver is 50, and the genetic strength of the blood giver is 20. That means that there would be that would make a total of 100, and that would mean that there's a 10% chance that we get the trait directly from the blood taker, a 20% chance that we get the trait directly from somebody in this champion's bloodline, a parent or a great-grandparent or grandparent, a 50% chance that we would get the trait strength from the blood giver, and a 20% chance that we would get the trait from somebody in the blood giver's ancestry. Parent, grandparent, great-grandparent, so on and so forth. This process occurs for all 8 traits. So at every single level, 8 different times, there's going to be a chance for it to be random or genetic. And if it ends up being genetic, then it'll follow this logic here in the example I just gave. Check out this next video linked here of an example of how this would work with 2 champs summon and how a cosmetic trait would be passed down between the 2 champions. Okay, so quick disclaimer for this video and the next video you're about to watch on how fighting traits get passed down. This is the first pass, and I'm going to make things very, very simple and top level for this first cycle. And then as we learn more, as I understand more, as I'm better able, or we really are able to better articulate how everything works, I'll be making updates and remixes of this specific video and any other video needed in the summoning playlist over time. But for now, I just want to give you the simplest explanation of how this stuff works, so that if you want to summon in this cycle, you have a general idea of how to do it and form some sort of basic strategy, which you'll develop over time as we all learn more about how this all works. So with that said, cosmetic traits are easier to understand and also more visible in terms of the results from summoning. So we're going to use that to analyze how the logic for summoning works first before we get into fighting traits. As we went over in this part, each trait is determined individually. The first step is to determine if the trait is being inherited versus randomly determined. So either random or genetic. It depends. Different cosmetic traits have different levels of randomness. So as we go here, there's a high random percentage for breed, very high random percentage for armor, low random percentage for hair, style and color, and low random percentage for war paint. So based on what we just saw and those likelihoods of randomness, every time you summon a champion, for each trait, it'll be decided whether or not it's random or genetic. If it goes random, it'll be some sort of draw from the available possibilities, maybe similar to a table like this. We don't know for sure yet. But if it decides to go genetic, then it'll be based on the values of these 4 things we're going to cover. So let's pick one of the 4 cosmetic traits, breed, and just kind of think about how this would play out. So we have a blood taker and a blood giver, and the blood taker is an elf, the blood giver is a dwarf. The blood taker has a 100 trait strength, 50 genetic strength, 250 trait strength for the blood giver, and a 150 genetic strength for the blood giver. If it goes genetic, all 4 of these values are added up. So 100, 50, 250, and 150. And the percentage likelihood that any of these 4 actions will occur will be tied to their percentage of the entire sum. So because there is a total of 550 points adding these 4 values together, and since 100 is 18% of 550, that means that there is an 18% chance that we will take the trait elf from the blood taker. There's a 9% chance that we take a trait from someone in the blood taker's bloodline. If this blood taker is a pure blood, then that means there's an 18 plus 9%, 27% chance that we get an elf cosmetic trait. As the elf, as a pure blood, has no parents or ancestry to give you any other trait other than elf. There would be a 46% chance of taking dwarf from the blood giver, because that's the trait strength and that comes directly from the parent, or a 27% chance of taking in the dwarf breed directly from someone in the blood giver's ancestry, parent, grandparent, great-grandparent. If this blood giver is also a pure blood, then that means that there's a 73% chance that we get a breed that's dwarf, because the blood giver has no parents and a bloodline of ancestors to pull from. 3 more important things to note. The genetic traits, trait strength, and genetic strength are inherited together with no adjustments from the blood giver of the summoned champion. So the genetic traits can be traced directly back to the original pure blood giver. What does this mean? This means that if in this example, if champion A, the elf, is a pure blood, and champion B, the blood giver, is a pure blood, whoever is the blood giver will always pass on this same value to all its descendants. So this half-blood that's created here, no matter if it gets elf or dwarf, will always have a trait strength of 250 and a genetic strength of 150. And if that champion that's summoned now is the blood giver in the next summoning cycle, whatever champion is produced from that summons in the second cycle, no matter who the blood taker is, that champion will inherit the same 250 trait strength and 150 genetic strength. It'll always be connected and will be able to be connected back to the blood strength, trait strength, and genetic strength of the original blood-giving pure blood champion. What this means is that switched on players can use the summonings of all the blood givers in their lineage to figure out their own genetic traits and use this to best impact future summoning. Also, when it comes to cosmetics, we want to talk about mutations. So there are 3 different types of mutations essentially. You have twins. There's a minute chance that when summoning, a pair of twins are produced. Each twin will have its own fighting traits. They will, however, have identical cosmetic and genetic traits. The blood taker battlemaster will keep both twins. So every time you do a summon, there's a small, teeny tiny chance that you have the opportunity to get twins. And if you're the person buying blood, then you get to keep it. And of course, if it happens in your own private summoning, you get to keep the twins as well. What? In addition to that, we have clones. If you summon a champion that has all the same cosmetic traits as either the blood taker or the blood giver, then they are known as a clone. So basically, if all 4 cosmetic traits of the parent is the same as all 4 cosmetic traits of the child, well then now you have yourself what's called a clone. And if you have a clone and the blood taker and the blood giver have one or more identical trait, then that clone will have polished armor. And if the blood taker and the blood giver have no identical cosmetic traits, then the clone is rewarded with an ultra rare nacreous trait. These are very rare cosmetic traits and should be highly prized by battlemasters. They are not able to be inherited. A blood taker or blood giver with a special background has the same amount of chance to produce a clone as any other champion with polished or nacreous background. And then even further, it's mathematically possible, although maybe very unlikely, but we may see a day where we're able to produce identical clone twins. So basically, you mint, surprised to find out you have twins, and both of those twins look the same. And if that ever happens, the Blood Queen is promised a substantial reward if ever a set of twins is born with all the same cosmetic traits as one of their parents. Open up that pocketbook, Matan. Lastly, we have naming a summon champion. You can see exactly how to do that in the how to summon a champion video linked below. It's all really straightforward, but I just wanted to let you know, just part of like the cosmetic part and the IP and all that stuff, that at the end of each of your summons, you will be able to name your own champion, and it's not random. So think about creative, cool names that you might want to use for your champion for future lore or whatever you want. Just make sure no inappropriate stuff. If you do so, the team will change it, and there may be punitive repercussions like being banned from future tournaments, so on and so forth. So just keep it all above board. All right, so now let's check out how this logic that we're using for the cosmetic traits is applied directly to fighting traits with one small addition. All right, so let's talk about how using the logic that we just saw with cosmetics applies to fighting trait with one addition. So same as cosmetic, it could be random or genetic bar. And if it rolls genetic, then it'll be any of 4 outcomes with the percentage likelihood of each outcome being dependent on the 4 values and the sum of those 4 values. Let's say it's Omega, and we're trying to pass on the Omega trait down to the half-blood. Using the strength values here in the example previously, there'd be an 18% chance that we get the strength of the blood taker, a 9% chance that we get the strength of somebody in the blood taker's ancestry that's not the blood taker, a 46% chance that we get the strength from the blood giver, and a 27% chance that we get the strength trait from somebody in the blood giver's ancestry that's not the blood giver. And again, keep in mind, if the blood taker and blood giver in this scenario are both pure bloods, then you have a 27% chance of taking strength from the blood taker champ and a 73% chance of taking the strength trait from the blood giver. So in addition to all this, which we already know, there's a third component that comes to fighting traits that doesn't apply to cosmetics. There's an additional role of variance or a likelihood that you can pass on improved traits to champions that you're summoning. And that likelihood of improving a fighting trait is going to be tied directly to the genotypes of the parents. 1 to 3, or Genesis champions, is the most likely to pass on improved traits, followed by Mystic champions are 4 to 6, Lionheart 7 to 9, and Warlord 10 to 12, which are 2 bloodlines that haven't been released yet or minted. And then all the half-bloods and soulless that come afterwards are least likely. One important thing to note is that the variance that you get on this chart comes from the lowest R number in the pairing. So an R1 and an R6 summoned together has the same most likelihood of improving a fighting trait. So an R1-R1 pairing has no more likelihood to improving a fighting trait than an R1-R6 pairing, because in both pairings, the lowest R number is R1. It's also important to note that when determining fighting traits, if a fighting trait is generated randomly, then it is not influenced by the genotype of the blood taker or the blood giver. So if we go back here and this if it rolls genetic, then if it rolls genetic, everything here we said applies. One of the 4 options gets chosen based on the percentages, and then there is a variance roll based on the lowest R number here. But if it ends up rolling random and we never even touch any genetic possibilities, that random trait value would not be affected in any way by the genotypes. In other words, all genotypes have the same chance of achieving any given random fighting trait. Which ties back nicely to this bit of alpha, which I'll share again. Just like a golden ticket, there is a chance that anyone can summon the best champion in the game. A few quick things also to note in terms of fighting traits, or at least traits that are related to how your champion performs in the arena. Special attack and special defense behave slightly differently when determining these fighting trait values for the summoned champion. These are calculated using an equation that takes into account the special attack or defense probability of the blood taker and the blood giver, so what percentage you'd see on like TRV tools or My Villagers. The higher the special attack or defense of the parent champions, the higher the summoned champion special is likely to be. So generally speaking, you want to have the highest special attack percentages possible in order to pass on the highest special attack percentage possible for the summoned champion. But it's important to note that this calculation is done in such a way to ensure that no summoned champion will ever have as high a special attack or defense likelihood as the purebloods. So the purebloods will always have the highest special attack and defense percentages over the life cycle of the game. Second to last, genotypes. Just so you know how the R number pairings work, essentially you take the R number of the 2 parents, add them together, and then add 11. So an R1 and an R1 is 2, plus 11 is 13, so they summon an R13. An R6 and an R6 is 12, plus 11, they summon an R23. And this logic goes on over and over and over again throughout all the multiple generations and cycles of summoning. An R25 and an R25 is 50, plus 11 makes an R61, so on and so forth. Once you have a pairing of 2 champions that produces an R number that is greater than 99, that creates what's called a soulless. And a soulless is a genotype that is undefinable, an RX or R, whatever it ends up being. And those champions will only be able to summon with pureblood champions in order to extend their bloodline further. Please note that genotype is an important fighting trait, as when fighting in tournaments, the champion with the lowest R number gets the first strike. The champion striking first gets a small advantage as combat. So the first strikes, if you don't already know, are nerfed. So they're not the same amount of power as a basic attack, but in a game that can be very, very close sometimes, that can come down to just a few HP, just a little bit blood left. Anytime you can try to get yourself an edge is possible. So definitely trying to optimize for the smallest R number you can for the champ that you summon is definitely a worthy endeavor. One last note about fighting stance. The preferred stance of the summoned champion is completely random and is not inherited by either the blood taker or the blood giver. If a summoned champion has the same preferred stance as either the blood taker or the blood giver, it is only a coincidence. So before I send you over to the how to summon video where we talk about how to list your champion in the spell book, buy some blood, do a private summoning, I just want to do one more video going over some of the tips and tricks for summoning. You can check that video out right here. All right, so last thing before I send you off on how to summon your champion, summoning tips and hits. Just wanted to go over real quick and then add a little bit of extra flavor on it based on just what I think about some of these things. There are no guarantees when summoning champions, none. The process of summoning has a relatively low level of randomness, particularly with fighting traits. So a relatively low level of randomness. There are still a very large number of possible combinations and traits, and it should be expected that results will vary greatly until such time as battle masters have a good understanding of genetic traits. It will take multiple summons to achieve a desired outcome. So keep in mind, while this is a very fun game, a very high level of strategy game, and a very potentially lucrative game, it may take a few cycles, even several cycles, to build that perfect champ that you're envisioning right now in this first cycle. With that said, here are a few tips. Use cosmetic traits as a guide to learn more about summoning mechanics. They're a lot easier to see. So using that logic that we went over for both cosmetic traits and fighting traits, over time, you're going to be able to look at all the different pairings and all the different champs that are summoned. And you're going to be able to see, based on how the breeds and the armors and everything else gets passed on, the inferences you can make about how strong a champion's blood strength may be and how that could have implications for how fighting traits are passed on. Use wisdom to understand what champions have the fighting traits that you are after. So if you want to fill in your weaknesses and you have a champ with high strength, maybe higher average or omega, but really bad defense, then think about, consider combining that with the blood of a champ that has high defense in order to create a summoned champion that has a more balanced fighting trait profile. There is no benefit to summoning with unblooded champs, none at all. And if you ever want to do any public summoning, you only get 50% versus the 75% profit of the blood fee if you just do one fight. Half-bloods may end up with improved fighting traits, but purebloods and summoning with purebloods will still have benefits. This is very, very true. And with the alpha that we got released prior to summoning launch, purebloods are very, very valuable. And it may take some cycles for everyone else to key on, combined with people coming in from other communities and hopping on the red wave. But I will say, absolutely, after everything I've read, purebloods are incredibly valuable. Start your summoning process with a goal or a target and work towards it. That goes to both summoning an individual champ or an individual profile that you're shooting for, but also how you manage your barracks. What do you want your barracks to look like a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now? What can you be doing now to put yourself in a position to reach that goal in a reasonable way, given how the logic works for summoning and the time horizon it would take for you to get to your end goal? Understand that it may take a few generations to achieve the outcomes that you want. If it doesn't work out the first, second, or third time, don't be disheartened. Keep at it. Any champion may be able to summon the next greatest champion. However, great champions, particularly purebloods, are more likely to do so. So any champion, even an R99 and an R99 that are both peasants, can in fact print that golden ticket and give you the best champion in the game. But the further you get from that pureblood bloodline, and when you start summoning without purebloods, that chance becomes smaller and smaller. But there's still always a chance. The best champion determines may one day be a soloist, but it'll take a number of generations to get there. So again, going back to the point about a goal, think about the long game, because the best champion in the game may be a champion that doesn't even have an R number, but it's going to take a lot of time, patience, strategic planning, and maybe even some luck to get to that point. So start thinking now about how you want to get there. When looking to save money and put your champions into the summoner's public, watch out for snipers. Remember, if you want to try to save some money by listing the blood of one of your champions and then buying it for one of your other champions, you will receive a portion of that fee based on how much the blood giver has fought in tournaments. But anybody in the game has the opportunity to buy your blood giver's blood for whatever price you set for it. So keep that in mind, be careful, and act quickly. Most importantly, have fun. Enjoy the chances and the vagaries of the summoning process. It is a game after all. Come up with a list of names for your champions that you want to write stories about. Come up with lore. Just enjoy the experimentation and the randomness and precision that can exist in a game like this, given everything we've learned so far. I'm super excited for everybody to enjoy this first cycle of summoning and all the cycles that may be coming on, or whatever cycle it is for you right now watching this video. And if there's anything that I can do to help you learn more about summoning or anything else about the game, please drop a comment below or feel free to ping me in the Discord, which is also linked in the description. Now that you've learned everything you need to know about summoning, check out this last video on the playlist, how to actually buy blood, list blood, do private summonings, and start your journey in creating the ultimate champion. Linked here.